Hello, welcome, and a bit of a serious one today. This one's about hearing loss. So the age type hearing loss like folk like me have started to get, but also younger people who've had their hearing damaged by exposure in our business to loud music typically, or maybe, if you're someone who works in a large factory where it's really, really noisy. People are taking hearing loss very seriously nowadays. We were thinking about how important hearing is if you're trying to do a mix. So when you start to get on a bit, like me, the top range of your hearing starts to come down. We always talk in audio terms about sort of 20 to 20k. That seems to be some sort of magic figure. And if loudspeakers can do 20 to 20k, they're really good. Lots of microphones can quite happily do 20 to 20k. Others are a little bit more limited, maybe 50 to 16,000, something like that. So when we're trying to do a mix and we're making EQ and balanced adjustments, how critical is it to actually have the bit up top? Now, the weird thing is that for most people, you sort of hear something like 10, 12k, 14k, and you think, that's really quite high. That's like treble. But the reality is that, in actual fact, the stuff at the top there is really harmonics. I mean, the very top note on the piano gets nowhere near the high end of the frequency spectrum. So I thought it'd be quite interesting to actually do a test for you all. So this is the idea. So what I've done is prepare a track, and I took something that I've already got on the machine that's got lots of high frequency content, and I chose something that's quite drum heavy. I've got rid of all the tracks that just got in the way. So we've got things like splash cymbals, ordinary cymbals, hi-hats, the snare drum, things where the top end we've always considered to be very important. And then I set about looking to bung a filter on it. So instead of 20k, I could go down to 18k and then stop anything above 18k, let you hear that, go down to 16k, same thing, and keep going right down. And I discovered that if you start at a very low frequency, and I started the test at 4k, really, really low, splash cymbal is still a splash cymbal. It's not very bright, but it's still a splash cymbal. And then I went in 2k jumps from 4k upwards. The snag I had was the cutoff. In Cubase, the DAW I use, the EQ can be a very gentle curve, or it can be a spiky curve, but it's always a curve. And what I wanted was an absolute cutoff. I didn't want the next highest notes to be a little bit lower and the next highest to that to be a little bit lower. I wanted it to sort of get to a certain thing like 10k and then nothing above 10k at all. And I couldn't find any of the EQs or filters in a Cubase that seemed to do that properly. But I did find one in Adobe Audition. There's an FFT filter in there where you can actually set the amount of reduction, so I set about 60 dB, and a frequency. And you actually get a straight line and then it dives. And it just slices off the bit that I didn't want for the test. And so I've knocked up the track, and I thought what we'll do is, once it's up on YouTube, you can listen either on decent speakers or your favourite headphones, and you can see where your hearing is. Because this is going to be quite interesting because, I'm getting on and I know that my top end is going. But it could be a surprise for people. I had to check it with my phone after I'd recorded it to make sure that the tones really were there. So my speakers were actually delivering the sound. The system was delivering the sound and my ears weren't hearing it. So I used my phone, the little app on my phone, and it let me check that the noise was in the room despite the fact that I couldn't hear it. So I suggest you have a go with yours too. But First thing, we need to set a baseline. What exactly does a tone of a certain frequency sound like? So here comes a sequence of tones. It's about 5 seconds on each one, starting at 4K, and we can all hear 4K, and going right up to 20K. So here come the tones. So now you've all heard the tones from 4K to 20K, and you know which ones you can hear, which ones you can't. And no doubt when you suddenly discover you can't hear them, you've checked them on your phone and discovered that, yep, they're in your room and your ears just don't work. Now, when you get old, I think you probably know that this is going to happen, and it's a gentle tail off over a certain frequency. I mean, I can certainly hear 14K. It's quieter than the 12K. So I know it's on the way down, but I can still hear the tone at 14K. How does that affect my mixing? Well, you know, I could be sticking a bit of extra HF boost to sort of bump that up a little bit. But would that be too much for someone who's got good hearing? So could the cymbals in my mixes sort of slice someone's head off if I've taken it too far? And I guess they could. We're now going to do the test with the music tracks, so you can see what happens when you slice off a section above a certain frequency. You already know where your hearing starts to go, so you'll know on this next section which bit you can't hear. I mean, and actually what happens is you hear it get brighter and brighter and brighter up to the point when the changes stop happening, and you should be able to identify what bits of the mix you would perhaps have changed because you can't hear it. It's very confusing, isn't it? So here we go. Here comes the music tracks. How did you do? I'm reasonably happy with my results, and it certainly, I think, proves to me that I don't actually need the stuff that's going on above about 14k. Once we get to sort of 14k, I'm not hearing the changes. So when 14 moved to 16 to 18 to the top limit of 20, I didn't detect any of that. How did you do? It sort of has a bit of an impact on how you mix. I don't think I'm going to change much. I've checked quite a lot of my sort of brighter mixes to see if I think they're troublesome to other people, and they don't seem to be, because there's not a huge amount of energy above about 14, 15 kilohertz in my sort of music. But if you're doing music where there is lots up top, there's a danger that if you can't hear it properly, you are going to be sizzling people's ears with the cymbals and stuff like that. So I've quite enjoyed doing this. It's been a bit of an eye-opener, and I hope not too many of the people listening to this music discover they've actually got problems. But at least if you know about it, you can hopefully do something about it. See you on the next video. Take care. Bye.